Hello.
Hey.
Me again.
And Mike Toboggan.
And Stefan, this beanie that our cousin made for him. I wanted to give you a video, make you a video. I was talking about last night about the translation from English into other languages. But also I want to kind of read into, I'm going to try to see if I can kind of memorize this. Because I tried to do the video and then go to find out it wasn't recording. So I made a whole video, but it wasn't recorded. So anyway, here we go. Now, this is what it says here in her book. Hazardous Material, 1108.
Whose book?
Hazardous Material. Gail Ripplinger. Okay, it says a large percentage of the translations discussed in these books were made in the centuries immediately following the publication of the 1611 Authorized Version King James Bible, and marked by the British missionary colonization movement. When one includes, number one, each individual translation of portions of scriptures, two, sometimes repeated retranslation of the languages throughout time, and the translations which have followed since 1860-1938, which are not included in the foremost old books, and the following examples, when then it becomes quite clear that it is not an exaggeration to say that the majority of individual translation projects since the first century have been taken up initially with a vernacular Bible, not a Greek text. Note just a few examples taken from the following book: The Bible of Every Land, A History of the Sacred Scriptures of Every Language and Dialect, spelling that is used in 1860. Let's see here. That's the Bible of Every Land. That's a book. I looked that up. It's still, there's only one on eBay. It said here, now the Anglo-Saxon came from the Latin version, which was used in before Jerome's time. The Arabic portions translated from the Coptic and Fashido.
Hey, I like that name, Jerome.
Yep. And Arabic, another part of it is from the Samaritan Pentateuch. Amharic from the Arabic version. Persian Old Testament made from the Syriac. Persian New Testament from the Fashido. Beluchi made the translation direct from the Persian Gospels and Hindustani Testament.
Quack.
Turn that down.
Dude.
Too loud. Armenian from the Syriac exclusively because no Greek manuscripts were available in Armenia. MMS. I forgot what that meant. Multiple manuscripts or something other, I guess. Telinga, it was translated the scriptures directly from Tamil version into his own language. Romani was from Spanish. Rarotongan, a translation was made from Tahitian version. Lithuanian was taken from a Polish version. Son,
You turn it down.
I know, but it's still too loud.
Goats get loud.
Another part of Lithuanian was made from the Luther's German version. I'm doing something, hush. Windisch says strictly to follow the German version of Luther. You notice in here, any Germanic language or Dutch, Swedish, what have you, was pretty much from Luther's German Bible. Carnelian translated from the Latin, German, and Italian versions, for he was unacquainted with the Greek, the man who did it. Piedmontese, faithfully rendered from Martin's French version into modern Piedmontese. Another version of it was translated from Diodati's Italian version. Pali, from Sanskrit to Pali, also taken the Bengali version. Ribera, which is Spanish, the translation was made from French version of Vince. Bruges, taken from the Urdu Bible. Danish, taken from Latin version of Erasmus and the German version of Luther. Little else than a verbal transmutation of Luther's.
Look,
Yeah, see?
his face
Big old
off.
hole.
His face off.
Wow. That's all made out of brick. Tushwashane was translated from the Slavonic. That's S-E-L-A, Avonic. Tamal may have come from the German version of Luther. That's near India. Malayalim, the translation had been taken from the excellent Tamil version. And another version of that was taken from Dr. Carey's Sanskrit. Greenlandish. A version of the New Testament is a literal translation of Luther's German version. Psalms from Luther's version. Dutch from Luther. Slavonic. That's S-C-L-O-Vonic. Collated with that versions of other languages. Icelandic from Luther and Vulgate. Another part of Icelandic, a faithful mirror of Luther's German version. Jewish and German on the basis of Luther's version. Jewish German. Marquesan, adaptation of the Tahitian version or the Marquesan dialect. Juriya, translated from the Bengali version. Ossetian, he translated chiefly from Romanian. Swedish, according to Luther's German version. There's some more in here, and we have to get to it. Let's see here. There we go.
His face came off.
This is pretty cool. I didn't realize this. But from the Bible, Every Land, by Samuel Baxter and Sons, edition 1860. That's who did it. Samuel Baxter and Sons, publishers. From Mohawk. He drew translation from the English version. Sitlapi. Then in the interpretation of the work, he had the English version ever before him. He also consulted the Dutch and some other versions, occasionally referring to German. This translation into general faithfully follows the English text, but little deviations from the text occur in a few instances, occasioned by a preference by Mr. Moffat for the corresponding Dutch rendering. Welsh from Tyndall's English. Seneca from King James Bible. How about that?
I'm going to do this whole thing.
First translated from the English King James Bible. Son, I'm not playing now. The modern Greek Bambus Old Testament was first translated with the English authorized. That's the Greek. The modern Greek Bambus Old Testament. How about that? The first draft of the whole translation of Arabic, was originally made by Dr. Ferris, admitted to be one of the best native Arabic scholars of the day, from the authorized English Bible. Later, it was afterwards to a very considerable extent corrected by the original Hebrew. Hebrew. Persian. The translator took the English authorized version for a basis and adhered to it as far as it expresses faithfully the sense of the original and rendering the sense of difficult passages. He first considered our English version, then turned to the original Hebrew. Tongan. The translation of the New Testament was chiefly drawn from the English version, but many passages were translated from Greek. Irish. The translation made in the first place from the English version. The translation was made in the first place from the English version, although Greek and Hebrew were used.
The sun blew up.
English as the final authority. Note the following examples of Bible for which the King James Bible was the final authority. Although They consulted the Greek and Hebrew initially. A rule was enforced, as in the case of the New Testament, to admit to no other rendering into the Caffrey translation, which does not occur either in the English, the Dutch, or the German versions. The translation had been drawn partly, that is, from the English version. Samoan, our English authorized version, has been constantly before us and adhered to as near as possible. Samoan. Since 1611, English consulted. Chinese. Morrison began with a very old Chinese edition of the New Testament, which had been taken from the Latin. For the Old Testament he accessed the Hebrew as well as the French and other versions. They add, he never appears, however, to make any remarkable departures from the sense of the authorized English version. Okay, now we got Hindui. Being unacquainted with the original language of the Scripture, he consulted the English authorized version, that is, of the Calcutta Bible Society, and all passages where there were Hindu idiom required him to author Martin's admirable rendering of the Hindustani, from which he worked. Sinhalese. Constant reference was made to the Sanskrit and Bengali versions. The Pali, the whole revision was conducted with continual reference to the Greek text and in the English version, that is. Karas consulted the English, German, and other versions. Turkish collated with the English, German, and French versions with the Tartan, Scott, Epernius, London Polyglot. Bengali Old Testament is known, but Carey may have recourse to the English version in addition. Breton, like Breton, consulted a Welsh and English authorized version, and the Greek and Hebrew. Okay. Greek is an authority, but because of the variance of Greek text, it cannot be the authority. Therefore, translators have seemed to only use it side by side with other versions. Now to finish with Greek with the aid of the Latin, German, and the Swedish versions. German, 1667, the original text, Luther's German, Diodati's Italian version. The Spanish Valeria, I was always wondering about that. Consulted Greek with their other translations, particularly with the French version of Geneva. Malayan, Arabic into Malayan, only later were the Greek and Hebrew checked. Now, that's pretty much the rundown on that. So basically, what we got is, if you look in Genesis, you see that, what's that, the church? If you look in Genesis, you'll see that Enoch was translated to heaven. You know, in Hebrews 11:5, it says that he pleased God, and he was taken up, translated as, and it was not found. So I mean, that's a very similar thing to what we can say with the Greek and Hebrew and Greek. You know, it's no longer found, but we have this new language. It's called English, and English is a universal language. It's spoken all over the world today.
Everywhere.
You know, and not every single country or place speaks English, of course. But people, basically, you got, you know, if it's not a primary language, it's a secondary language, and people quite understand it. So I mean, there's hardly a place you can go without using the English language. And Deuteronomy talks about Deuteronomy 30, 11 through 14 or 15. It talks about, you know, we don't have to go to heaven. We don't have to go across the sea. The word is here and is in our mouth to speak and to do it. And then you go to Romans 15, 5, I believe, and it says these things were made for our, you know, they were put together. How does he put it? Also, just go ahead and look in the Bible. Make sure I say it right, because I'm too focused on something else. I'm being distracted. Let's see what it says here. Oh man, I almost turned right to it. When you turn right to something like that, that's pretty cool. I've done that before. I'm going to be thinking about something, and then I turn right to it. It's like, wow. Okay, Romans 4 says, for whatsoever things were written aforetime were written for our learning, that we through patience and comfort of the Scriptures might have hope. Now we go to Romans 16 and 25. This is what it says here. Now to him that is power to establish you according to my gospel and the preaching of Jesus Christ, according to the revelation of the mystery which was kept secret since the world began, but now is made manifest, and by the Scriptures of the prophets, according to the commandment of the everlasting God, made known to all nations for the obedience of faith. So, I mean, saying basically this, especially when it was given in Acts 2, when the tongues appeared over their heads and stuff like that, and the people that were there understood the languages that was being spoke, no matter where they were from. That's how it all began. And that's how it got developed into English. That's how it was developed into, from the beginning there, Cappadocian, whatever language that person spoke, they took the gospel back basically into their own native countries, into their own native tongues, and they helped in creating by faith. They didn't create it themselves. They came, it was brought out that the vulgar tongues of that nation were brought out, and they were given over to finally in succession, like the English language, like French, like Dutch, like whatever other language there is out there. And I keep getting distracted because I keep watching that video of that bridge going on that. Yeah, now you're getting the helicopters. Cool. Anyway, it says that God made known to all nations for the obedience of faith, even the nations that weren't yet nations. Even this nation that wasn't yet a nation, God made known that the obedience of faith. It was from our ancestors, from the nations in which it came before. It was from all these European nations, which became these peoples, which became nations, and it came through the languages of the time. It came through the Gothic, the Anglo-Saxon, according to us, and then it came to our English, which is Anglo-Saxon's Old English. I mean, there was a certain language before that, and you can see how it develops. If you go back to the Gothic and the Anglo-Saxon and the English, you can see how these words started developing. They were kind of like a tiny sign, chain, home. And I'm not talking Japanese, but I'm just saying how it developed from one impure language, but it was a language at the time, until what we have it today. It is awesome how it came to be. But anyway, we go to Hebrews 11, talking about Enoch again. Hebrews.
I'm shooting the Agent T Tower.
Good for you.
Don't act like that, girl.
Let's see here. Chapter 11:5. It says in Hebrews 11, it says, by faith Enoch was translated that he should not see death, and was not found, because God had translated him. For before his translation he had this testimony, that he pleased God. So again, if the Hebrew scriptures and the Greek scriptures please God, so much more so the translation of them, because it said earlier, and as I just got through reading, that it was for our benefit that we had the translations that Paul said in Romans 15. And it said in Romans 16 that God, by faith, it was given to all the nations to understand, So we have it, and it's by faith. And it was just like a similarity to Enoch being translated. So if he pleased God as to who he was before he was translated, so much more so to those of us who speak English now than as opposed to those who were speaking Greek and Hebrew at the time. So again, English being an international language, little bugs, that's what I look like. English being an international language, and now it's all over the world. Evidently, that's the language that God wanted to use. It's not the only language, but it's the primary language. And even in that, as I first started reading these languages, this English language helped translating into other languages that people understand. It was used as the basis. First of all, you have Acts 2, which God used into people understanding a language. And then it came to a primary language like the English language, and that English language was used to translate into other languages. That's pretty neat, I think. It's pretty cool. That's awesome.
Rocket launchers.
Okay, now we're going to go. I hope that's helpful. I'm sorry I'm not focused. I'm trying to say it right, but the Bible Protector, his video, he said it way better than I could have, I think. But anyway, y'all take care.